Okay, thank you for all attending this session today, which is our Sage 300 year-end for 2018 webinar presented by Envisage Business Solutions. We've decided to run it at this stage so that it can help you prepare for year-end and work out your cut-off dates. And this is used to be a bit of a guide. I've got some supporting documentation I can email you out afterwards. But please feel free at the end to ask any questions. I have muted the attendees just for the recording so that I can send a recording out to you all and we don't have a lot of feedback. So I will unmute at the end for questions. So I'll begin. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some important points to do with year end and just briefly why I believe that year end worries clients so much. The steps you can take from now leading up to financial year end, 30 June. Obviously some clients do use different financial years, so maybe 1st of January, but this is obviously still going to apply just with different dates. I'm going to talk about some other considerations before running year end, backups and database dumps, integrity checks, and then I'll do a quick demonstration to show you how simple it is in sample data, and then at the end we can do any questions and answers that you may have. Okay, just important notes. Today I'm going to be using Sage 2018 desktop version, which has been out now for quite a few months, so it's 6.5. Sage has been undergoing some rebranding and it is now recognised as the Sage 300 product. Today it doesn't matter what version you're running, everything that I talk about should apply, and the only difference may be the amount of years that you'll be able to retain, so that shouldn't be any issue. Okay, I often get asked from clients, oh, it's a big process, can you please just come out and do it for us? And that's fine, I'm happy to see you all. But I think it stems from older DOS systems and older versions of Sage where the process was very cumbersome. We used to have to run all the reports off, clear them all, and it was a long process. The other point is that it's also just something that's run once a year. It could be that you've done it for the last 20 years like I have, but it may be just that it's because it's a one-off, you need a refresher each year, and that's why we've chosen to run these webinars. There could also have been some staff changeover, so the person that ran it last year may not be there, or it might be that you're just trying to upskill more staff in your office. And I think the most important one is that you just forget how easy it was last year. So it's a fairly easy process and nothing to be concerned about. Okay, so why is year end so easy in Sage 300? It's because the product has date-sensitive accounting, and it just means that we can have multiple years of history and we can post to multiple years, and we have full flexibility as long as your transactions are dated with their correct entry date and posting date. The system's going to know how to perform and behave with these transactions. So that makes it very simple. What does the actual year-end function do in Sage 300? And in essence, it's just a button. And once we click on that button, what it does is it creates and posts a batch of transactions to close the income and expense accounts and enter the opening account balances for the new fiscal year. It also, the opening balances for the new fiscal year for balance sheet and retained earnings accounts are the same as the previous year's closing balances. The income and expense accounts all open up with balances of 0. And it changes the current processing date in the fiscal year in the general ledger to the new fiscal calendar. I often get phone calls about, well, when should I process and do this year end? And I've just sort of highlighted here that the advantages for doing it on 1 July, actually this year I think that might be a Saturday, so good luck to you all. But it is that you can continue posting into your GL. So basically without processing year end on your database, you won't be able to post anything into the GL for the new fiscal year. Now for some organisations this might be fine, and I do have a lot of organisations that do wait for the auditors to potentially come in September prior to processing their year end. There's absolutely no reason to wait this long. And what it does is it stops all your reporting ability. So for most organisations, you would want to keep real-time reporting, and it's very important that you would run this early. So I've mentioned there that the advantage is that you can continue posting to the general ledger, and the disadvantage is that if you've still got a lot of backdating of entries, every time you post an entry in the system, some extra closing entries will create with every journal. And this can slightly slow the system down. But to me, I don't see that as a big enough disadvantage to weigh up against the ability to lose real-time processing. So that's just a consideration. And that's something you should start now talking about in your organisation. What date will you actually roll year end? And we'll talk about that a bit more. Okay. Clients will then ask, if I roll the year on the 1st of July, what happens to everything that I want to put back, or someone comes in and allows an adjustment to be processed? And that's still fine. If the fiscal period's closed and year end's been done, as long as someone's got rights, they can reopen the fiscal period and that journal can be processed, or invoice can be processed back into that year. Sage 300 then automatically detects that that date is in the prior fiscal year, and it will continue to close off each entry and close off the accounts and create the additional posting journals. And on the bottom of a posting journal, you'll see extra posting journal entries to do with the closing. So what can you be doing now in the lead up to year end? You should select a year end date and discuss it with your staff. You've probably got a monthly date that you create cut-offs now. You may say, look, all the accounts payable invoices being received after the 7th of the month, they get processed in the new month, and anything after that, anything before that can be backdated. But you need to just work out that cut-off date, and that's important to work that out. You can do a couple of steps straight after this webinar, because the first thing that's going to happen on 1 July is that someone will, well, maybe the 3rd if it's a Monday, is they'll come into the system and they'll start to get warning messages, or they'll try and post entries and it will say that this fiscal calendar has not been created, that this date doesn't match. So you can create the new fiscal calendar today. I also do have a lot of clients that have got a lot of forward fiscal calendars open anyway, so there's absolutely no problem by doing this, and you could do this at any time. The reason they open those future fiscal fiscal calendars is so that they can store future budgets. So that might be something that you're interested in. I also do, and this might be a little bit closer, maybe in the last week leading up to 30 June, turn off automatic posting of batches. Because if you are going to delay your year end and the automatic posting, and I can show you where those settings are, you'll start to get error batches, and sometimes that concerns users, and it just starts to pull all these batches and it just says error, error, error. So if you turn off the automatic posting, we can alleviate that. You'll also just have to consider that your auto-reversing journals in June won't have anywhere to post to in July, and they'll throw an error batch if the new fiscal year has not been created. So that's just something to make users aware of also. So straight after the webinar, you can go and have a look at these considerations, and I'll just flip out to show you in Sage 300 where you can create that new fiscal calendar. Oops. Did have that hiding there, the PowerPoint's doing that. So I've got my Sage 2018 just here, so it will look a bit different. It's your desktop version, and I'm going to go to Common Services, Fiscal Calendar, and I've got the 2020 year because I'm in sample data, and if I want to create a new fiscal calendar, I can simply click on the New button, and depending on your version, that might be a little white page. You can see that it's opened up the 2021 year, and I can add that. You can easily go and lock or unlock that to stop people posting entries into there, but that's as simple as it is. So you can continue to create as many future fiscal years as you'd like. The other thing that we just spoke about there was turning off auto posting. Now, many of your modules, and I'll just show you in accounts payable, under the AP setup and under options, there should be sorry, I've just led you astray there. Under AP setup and then under GL integration. I was looking for something else then. Depending, and this is in AR, bank, there will be a GL integration tab. It's also the spot where you can tell the system what information to pass through to journals, but it's on this first tab, and it's this here. It says, should I do it during posting? Should I create a new one, or should I create and post a new batch? So depending on what settings you've got there, that's where the automatic posting is. Okay, I'll just go back to the slide. Okay. Now, there's also a couple of things while you're getting ready and you're talking to staff about these dates, to start to talk about what are the things that we're going to do in this last month and what can we be really on top of before year end. And that is to make sure that all your batches are up to date and that you've posted them. I often find a lot of clients will have some batches sitting in maybe adjustments or something, and it might be just a 0 blank one, or it might have an entry and you'd thought about processing it, but it's a good time to clean it up, and it's a good time to go through every batch list screen in Sage 300 and have a look at the flag of open batches and just see what they are. Before running the year end, you'll also probably consider running off some reports and ensuring things are reconciled. So we'll go through some more information on that reconciliations in a further slide. We also check the chart of accounts, we check the years of history, and we check the retained earnings account. And I'm going to step you through how you can do that as well. You should also consider clearing history. It's not such a big deal these days, but a lot of clients will actually create an archive company of their Sage 300 database, and then in their live database start to clear some of the history. Depending on how long you've been running, and some of my clients I have been working with for over 15 years, there could be over 15 years worth of data there. So some of the screens or some of the inquiries could be starting to slow down, but it's not such an issue these days with server capabilities. We can also then talk about the backups and the integrity checks. Okay, so what I mentioned then, when we say post all entries, so my tip for this also is that on the 1st of July, you can start to batch your information. So if you haven't quite closed off yet and you've got accounts payable users entering information into invoices, just say to them, hey, anything pre-30 June put into this batch, anything after another batch. It just helps with those error posting journals that you might start to get through General Ledger. So that's a tip in relation to that. So as I said, let's post as many entries as we can, and let's get them all into the current financial year. And that, of course, is going to help with reconciliations, which we'll talk about. Some clients like to print and file all their reports at a certain time. In the newer versions of Sage 300, your transaction listings and things like that, you can cross future years. So if you're still running an older version, you may not be able to, but a lot of clients will actually run these to file just so that they've got a record. You're not going to lose them. They're always there. It's just probably more of a habit or how you prepare your information for your auditors, just so that everything's saved in a certain spot. When I mentioned before about reconciliations, clients might say to me, hey, what reconciliations do you mean? And certainly if you're not doing these now, give me a call afterwards and we should have a big chat. But you should at least be reconciling your ARH trial balance to your debtors control in your general ledger every month. Same with your accounts payable, creditors control. The bank recs to your bank accounts you should be doing monthly, and that also goes for tax and inventory, and if you've got a payables clearing in your purchase orders to show any purchase orders receipted but not invoiced, and doing simple reconciliations like that. As you are aware, Sage 300 is a batch processing system, so it is possible for these modules to get out of sync. So it's important to do these reconciliations. There are controls that you can do to minimize this, and there's certainly lots of tips on how to find them, but if you do have a reconciliation issue, year end's a great time to clear it up. Okay, I mentioned also to check your chart of accounts. Clients might say, well, what do you mean my chart of accounts is there? The most common problem clients call me about, they might say that one of their P&L accounts has a balance after year end. And then after a few conversations, they do admit that it was a balance sheet account at the time of year end. And that's an important thing, is that if an account gets rolled with the wrong status, there's no, oh, let's just rerun year end again. You'd have to do a journal to move any of those balances. So if the account type is flagged incorrectly and the year end processes, it doesn't know if it was meant to trigger the entry to retained earnings. So you need to make sure that they're all correct. And to do that, what we do, I'll just minimize that again, is I would recommend probably going into your GL accounts. You can either go into accounts or chart of accounts, and you can either whiz down and have a look, depending on how big your chart is, but it may be something that you're better off doing an export out to Excel. And what you're interested in is having a look at this balance sheet. Now, generally, if you're running regular financial reports and you've got a good business intelligence tool, if you had an account set incorrectly, you would know about this immediately. It just may be that you have not picked this up sooner. So it's definitely worth doing a bit of an export out to Excel. Let me know if you're unsure of how to do that. Then you can open it in Excel and run down the column and import back any changes. Okay. Okay, the other thing to do is that unwillingly you may clear data on this year end. You will get a couple warnings as you're about to do it, but it's very important for you to be aware of how many years of history your system can take and what year you're up to. So we've had a few name changes in these, but generally we're premium, advanced and standard of Sage 300, and the years of history is limited in those lower versions of the product. So those on premium Sage 300, there's no issues, and you've got 99 years, and if there is an issue, well, I always say I won't really mind, because I won't be here to worry too much about it. So where to check for that is in your GL setup and options. If you go to your posting tab, you can have a look here. Now, if you see under the posting area here, current fiscal year 2020, my oldest year of fiscal sets is 2018, and I've told the system to keep 3. So depending on if I was up to that 3rd year, it will clear history. And there is no magic unclear history button. So that would be where your backup would kick in. But if users have started processing on the system again, you've got some issues that we'd need to deal with. So this is a very important one for you just to check, because you may never have ever been into these screens and it was probably set by predecessor, or it may have just been loaded as default. So if you're on a lower version, if you tried to key in 8 years and save it, it'll say you can only have 7. So just make sure it's either set to 7 or 99. Okay, when I say check the retained earnings account, this is also in that GL options. But for some of the other companies, and some of them that are signed on to the session today, who might utilise a number of entities within the same database, you can actually close certain accounts depending on the GL segment to different retained earnings accounts. And I'll just show you what I mean by that. So under the GL setup options, under posting, under account, the default closing account there. That is the one that all the P&L accounts will close to unless there's been something else set. So in this database, which is SAM Inc., you can see here that I have told the system to use the division segment in closing. So what that means is that under the segment code setup, you can see that this division, they have different closing accounts. Now that's not the only spot that needs to be set. And when you're checking your chart of accounts, if this does apply to you, this is another good area to be checking. So if I go to GL accounts, and I'll just go to the end where I know some of my income statement ones are. See how on this account, down the bottom here, it says close this one with division to this retained earnings account. And then if I go to the next one, it's a different one. That's how the system knows to close to multiple retained earnings accounts. So if you need any help with that setup, please just let me know and we can do some spot checks on there. But the ability to do it is certainly in your Sage 300 system. Okay, I talked about clearing history. Clients are never sure whether to do it or not, and it purely is or should be about space and how quickly the system's reacting to inquiries. And so it should be looked at potentially each year, but it may not be a consideration. So I've kind of said here that we definitely, whilst the system allows it, I don't recommend to clear all the posting journals or reset the batch numbers. Reason being, for audit controls, if you reset your batch numbers, you are going to have 2 accounts payable batches, 3,955, and the auditors could ask questions why. I haven't seen a Sage 300 system yet that's maxed out a batch number listing, and I think it would take some time to do that, so there's certainly no concerns there. I always too, when I say to a client that is considering clearing history, that we should do a bit of a test first. Let's archive it off, create a test company, do some of the clearing, let's see if you're really getting the gains that you think that you might, and if you're not, then let's not proceed with it in the live database, but if it is proving good, then let's pursue it. So, but again, if you want to discuss clearing history, we should be starting those discussions now, so we can get prepared for it for year end. Okay, backups and integrity checks. Never perform, even clicking on the year end button that I'm going to show you, without making sure that there is a backup of the system. In all my years, which is nearly 20 of Sage 300, I've never seen a year-end fail, but that's not to say that it couldn't and that you might need to roll back. You've got to consider that the system's doing a lot of things, and if the perfect environment occurred where it maybe potentially ran out of space on a server, it may not have the ability to roll back successfully. So this is also a great time of year if you are not aware, and if you could not answer the question, how often are my backups? How far back could I go? And what is our routine with this? If you can't answer any of those questions, you need to speak to your IT department or your hosting area as soon as possible. So the backups that you might potentially have will be a IT related one. They'll be probably performing nightly backups of the entire server. Your Sage 300 databases are a SQL database, so there's potentially a SQL maintenance plan in place that will be placing a SQL backup into another location. You can also be doing database dumps as another means of having a backup if you don't necessarily have immediate access to IT to request one. But a lot of these backups could be being cleared every 3 days. You may not know your schedule. You may be surprised to realise that you may not be able to go back 2 days if you needed it. The other thing too is some clients do like to keep their year-end backups and keep them. So you may need to just put a request in with IT and say, hey, back up on 30th of June. Regardless, I want you to put that somewhere safe and I want you to keep it. I don't want it cleaned up and overwritten. I need you to park it somewhere else. Okay? The secondary part to this, and sorry, if you need help with database dumps or loads, I've got some notes I can send out to you, or I can talk you through it. But the database dump is the Sage 300 process for dropping all the files down, and it does it in an indexed way. So it is a way that a user with the right rights can get to. Sage 300 also has integrity checks. A lot of clients do run these religiously. Others maybe at only year end. Trust me, if there is something wrong with the integrity of your data, you'll notice it before you're probably doing the integrity check. There are some great options in there though. If you're noticing some anomalies in your inventory calculations between a stock valuation report and a movement report, I have seen the fix option correct these database errors. But again, it should be something run sort of under advisement and after a backup's been done. But again, I can provide you more information on integrity checks. Okay. Also, what you need to consider in relation to running year end is that certain third-party products have year-end functions. Our probably most popular third-party products being norming fixed assets and the cash book Perisoft do have their own year-end functions, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you run the Sage 300 or the norming one or the cash book one in which order, but I generally, as a rule, if you are ready to roll year-end, I would do all the sub-modules and then the general ledger, but you won't hit any implications. But it's just something to consider that it's not just in the general ledger that you will need to do this year-end. Okay. Something else to consider for year end is that depending on your chart of accounts, and I'm thinking of one in particular that has signed on to the session, it could take a long time. If you are running multiple entities in your database and you have a large chart of accounts, it has to run through every account. So if you're thinking, great, I've come in early, I'm going to do the year end, I'm going to click the button and I'm going to keep everybody out, you just need to consider or do a test run in your test database to get the timings right, because you might think it's a 30-second process and 3 hours later you might still have users out of the system. So you don't have to, but I do recommend all users out of the submodules and out of the system. In fact, the year-end processing button will want you to at least be out of general ledger, so you need to factor that in. And for users who don't have too much control over their backups, if you do it first thing in the morning, at least you could say to IT, please go back to last night's backup, or just schedule with IT a good time to do this. So I have clients that might stay behind one night and they might run it last thing of the day. But what you've got to just be wary there is if anything did happen and you needed to restore without a special request, it would be to the night prior. So just consider that when you're doing this. Okay. There are other processes after year end that you can do, and that's what the period end maintenance function's for. But the one in particular on this slide that I just want to mention is that you can print out a source journal report, and I can show you how to set one up, and we'll do that in a moment, so that you can just get an audit report out basically of all journals that have the CL, that is the source code that's been assigned to them from the year-end function. Users say to me, but hey, it's one batch, I can just print that batch listing out. If you've done some modifications and continue to add other journals, there will be more than one journal batch, and someone or an auditor might come in later and say, just give me everything that occurred in that closing, and this is a simple way to do it. So to do that, and this, a lot of clients have not got this set up, so this might be something that you need to consider. So firstly, under GL setup and source codes, there will be one here, which is what Sage automatically uses for closing to. The source codes that are in here are just identifiers on GL transactions. If you're not sure how to use these, let me know, but a lot of clients will use them for things like You might have one that has OB for all the opening balance entries, SA for salaries. It's just an extra identifier that you can extract extra information out of the system. Okay, you can then do what we call I can go year-end closing, pick up anything that's a GLCL, and I can say save. What that's told the system is that I've created a source journal profile that has been told to just pick up this source code. And then if I close that, I'm going to go into GL reports and source journals. Okay, then what I can do is drop down and go my year-end closing. It's picking up its automatic report, but this report's actually good in that I can choose my fiscal year, I can tell it to run for all accounts and all segments, and I can put a date range in. That's why some other clients will use this too. It's the only screen in the GL pretty much that has a date range rather than just the year end. And then you can run this report, and what this report will do is just extract everything out that went in as a GLCL. So that one isn't a default standard one. You do need to do those steps that I just mentioned to create it. Okay, if you need help with that, just let me know. Okay, also explaining and a lot of this for a lot of you will be repetition, but Sage 300 has more than the 12 fiscal periods. You can have the 13 if you've got a calendar for weekly fiscal year set up. Fiscal period 14 is where you can process some adjustments to, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And 15 is what the system uses for its automatically closing period. So if I just go to a journal screen, I'll just open that one up. You can see here, like these entries for this date were posting to period 5, but I also do have an adjustment and a closing period. Okay, so if I had wanted to, you could have changed that to the adjustment period. And that's all that that's referring to, that slide about those fiscal periods. Okay, as mentioned, the most common support calls I get about year end are that I still have a balance in one of my P&L accounts, and that was that it was set incorrectly at time of year end. And the second one is, can I run some reports that exclude my auditor's adjustments? And yes, you can, depending on whether you're using what reporting tool. There might be different methods, but that is all in relation to what we just mentioned here, that if you have finalised year end, you might have all your journals you've done, but then your accountant or auditors have given you some journals. You could enter a journal batch of adjustments, and you might have even used a source code as well for those special ones. But by posting those to the adjustment period, what that means is that you can have a set of financials that you say, please include my adjustment period, or please run to period 12. So it's just a way of saying, hey, this is ours and this is with it, the auditor's adjustments included. Okay, and that's the purpose of that fiscal period 14. Okay, and this slide is just to sort of show you that we can use different fiscal periods within the financial reporter, which is the standard tool inside of Sage 300. Okay, some tips before I show you through the year end, because we're nearly through this session. As I mentioned, advise users to batch data around the first of the new year so that they can continue to just post their stuff through that's 30 June and leave open until the year end has been finalised, anything that's dated July afterwards. And also we can set up or use a visual process flow to help you through this process. And if you're not familiar with visual process flows, I've got in the PowerPoint here just a screenshot of one I've set up. I'll just go to your system. Now these came in, I think, in 2012, 2014 onwards of Sage 300. If you don't see them appearing down here on your list, it just means that you may not have been assigned rights to them. And what they are, if I just show you one of the AP ones, is just a visual representation of your process flow. And these are very easy to edit. You can customize them yourselves. It makes it a one-stop shop, makes it very easy for training new users. So they're really worthwhile. So I just sort of mocked one up quickly, and it has the steps to year end. And you might create one and have it sitting there for next year. And I can put anything on here. I can put Excel spreadsheets, I can put crystal reports, but I can very simply go, I want to go and open my new year. And I can click on that button and it's going to take me to my fiscal calendar. I want to go and check my years of history. Click on it and it'll take me to where I need to go. So that's another tip, is you could use visual process flows to customize something to assist you with year end. Okay. All right, so we've just got to here. So I'm going to just very quickly show you how simple the actual year end is itself. So what I would probably do as the user, I would have gone through, created my new fiscal calendar, which we did in one of those steps earlier. Then I would go through, make sure that I'm going to check my years of history and my default closing account. I might go, right, no, I want to make that 99 years. It's just warning me that I have one of these other GL screens open, so I'll just close those. And I'll just save that. It's registered the change on the 99 years. I would go, okay, I'm going to go and have a look at my chart of accounts. So I could either use a finder key and quickly scroll through and go, okay, yep, they're all balance sheets. And then I can have a look there, yep, they're okay, and yep, that's the start of my income. So depending on the length of your chart, you can just have a look at it from that window, or you could do your export. Okay, your file export out. Think about, am I closing to multiple retained earnings? Should I go and check those settings as well? When you're happy with all of that, the other things that we did talk about was very simply, I go, right, I'm going to turn off my tick for show, post and deleted. I've got 3 GL batches to post. Make sure everything's posted. You can then go across and do that in each of your submodules. Okay, none in my AP. Never forget your adjustment batches. Some users will actually go in there and create some, but it's very easy to sort of check. So when you're happy and you've got everything there, the next thing that you might do, if you're a user with the right rights, you can come to admin services and do a database dump. You can say, I'm going to dump my SAM Inc. I'm going to dump it to this location, and it's my backup before year end. And that's just warning me it's going to delete them, and I'm going to drop that down. Now, clearly, this is a database dump. If I was to restore it in 3 years' time by loading it because someone wanted it for some reason, my version of Sage might have changed, so I might need to upgrade it again or something like that. But it is another way that you as a user do have a bit of control and go, hey, I actually did back this up. So that is a step there. You then are ready pretty much to tell the system to go off and process year end. So you will do general ledger, GL periodic processing, and create new year. Okay, it's going to give you a big warning, tell you to back up your data. It's then also going to tell you that it's going to get the data ready for processing in this year because I'm in sample data, and it's warning me that it's going to clear all my data back in 1922. So, and it's going to move me forward into the 21 year. Now, this is a step that is going to potentially take a little while depending on the size of your GL accounts. But if I hit process here, it's going to whiz through and it's going to create my closing entries. Okay. So it's new year 2021's been created. And if I go and have a look at my GL batch list screen, I've got a batch here for all of my closing entries. And see how they've got that source code, GLCL, and they've also been posted fiscal year 2020 CLS. So that's what the system's done, and that's what it's created on closing. Okay, so I'm going to just, I think, unmute you all at this stage and just see if anybody's got any questions, because that's pretty much the year-end process all wrapped up. So,
Hi, Stacey, it's Chiro. I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Can you show us how to clear the inactive accounts after year-end?
Okay. Yep. So in the after the year-end process, under GL periodic processing, there should be, if we go to period end maintenance, you can say delete inactive accounts. Okay, but that is inactive accounts for the 99 years of history that I've told the system to keep. So if you think, oh, it's just in this last year, I haven't used them, you would need to change your years of history that you are retaining to support the ability to delete the inactive accounts for that period. So if you've used them once in the last 7 years, it will, and 7 years is what you've got set, it won't clear them. Okay, and again, this I definitely recommend. Just doing a database dump of your live, putting it into your test, and doing it first in your test database. Okay, just to see what it's actually really going to do. Okay. And sorry, the step I probably have missed in that is that they have to be flagged inactive. They need to be inactive. So you can use the import and export to do that, but it won't delete them if they've been flagged active.
As every account, and that becomes like, if you want a chart of accounts, you print that as your master. Yeah. And then the other entities just have the ones they need. That's right. So you did that, and the master would lose some. Yeah. Unless you could just do it for, well, if you
okay.
do it for an entire.
Yep, sorry, I can hear feedback in the background there of users discussing that. Have they got a question there? Right, that's okay, good. Any more questions while we're in here?
Yeah, we're all good, thanks.
Okay, good. So again, I can send the PowerPoint.
Good, thank you.
PowerPoints out to you, and I've got a account considerations document I can resend back out to the attendees, and I can get you the recording of this. So, but yeah, if you've got any questions.
Yeah, that'll be good, Stacey.
Yep, great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacey. Bye.
Bye.